All right, here I am. This is 211, Supervision and Team Building, review for the final. Wow. By the time you're watching this video, you're getting mighty close to being towards the end of the semester. And so I congratulate you on that. Let me say this, I have enjoyed this class. I have enjoyed doing these videos. I've kind of enjoyed doing something different, something new, but I have to be honest with you and tell you, I'd love to have been in class with you, just face to face, because the discussions can be so much fun, and we had some great discussions in class. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and do a final review for our final test in Supervision 211. Okay, now as I mentioned to you before, chapters 13, 14, and 15 are the last three chapters in the book. Those are the chapters we had not covered since test number 3. And so we've already gone through those, we've done the videos, you know the no's and to be familiar with, so I'm not going to go over those. I'm going to go through chapters 1 through 12. Now I want to show you, if you can kind of see, this book is just about ready to fall apart. I have had it for a while. So I'm going to cradle it here and try to make sure that I don't, because if I drop it, this could be a very long video by the time I get it all put back together. So for that being the case, just kind of bear with me if I hang on to this thing. I'm going to start the review, I guess I'm going to say on page 0. Now what in the world do you mean by that? Well, here's what I mean by that. The first thing we did when we came into class is that I gave you this handout of what a supervisor is. And this book is supervision. So the first no thing would be that no thing that you had on chapter number 1. I want you to know the definition of supervisor, okay? So that's kind of like page 0. This came from me. All right. Also in chapter 1, on pages 6 and 7, he talks about leadership style. A supervisor has got to be a leader. Remember, the reason I gave you a definition of supervisor is he didn't even define what a supervisor was. He started off chapter 1 with leadership. And he talked about leadership styles. I would like for you to know these 5 leadership styles. Autocratic leadership, leaders who take this approach makes decisions without consulting the employees. Democratic leadership, these are leaders that involve employees these leaders will involve the employees who will have to implement the decisions in making them. So a democratic leadership style is you involve your employees in decisions because they're the ones going to have to carry them out. Participative leadership. Leaders exert less direct control over the decision-making process, rather they provide information about the problem and ask team members to recommend solutions. Now, in a democratic leadership style, the supervisor makes the decision, but he will get input from the employees. In a participative leadership style, basically the supervisor just sets aside the parameters. Between here and here is where you have to operate. Now, give me your suggestions for decisions. He actually lets the folks make the decisions. Goal-oriented leadership asks team members to focus only on the goals at hand. And then the last one was situational leadership. Leaders select a style appropriate to the circumstances. So I'd like for you to know those 5 leadership styles. Autocratic, where the person makes a decision without consulting anyone. The democratic style is where the supervisor makes a decision, but he gets input from his employees. The participative leadership style, where within certain parameters, the people are able to make their own decisions. Goal-oriented leadership, where you're focused only on the goals itself. And then his last one, situational leadership. The leadership, the style you select depends upon the situation. So I'd like for you to know those leadership styles. Okay, let me go a little bit further and see what else I can find. That was on page 6 and 7. Oh, by the way, I went all the way to page 8. There was something at the bottom of page 8 that I just thought was really, really interesting, and something I want you to be familiar with. And that is, he says, good leaders may be popular with those they supervise, but they may be respected. It's fine if you're liked by your employees. There's nothing wrong with that, but you must be respected. There may be situations where your employees, because of the decision you made, they don't particularly like you right now, but they still respect you. So it's not about being liked, it's about being respected. If you get both, it's fine, but respect is key. That's to be familiar with. Chapter 3 on communications. In chapter 3, he talks about communication versus effective communication. That's on page 24. He tells us that communication is the transfer of information that is received and fully understood. But he says effective communication occurs when the information that is received and understood is acted on in the desired manner. So I want you to know what communication is. I want you to know what effective communication is. And if you do, I want you to know the difference between the two. Okay. Chapter 4, that effective communication, and that was on page 24. I can't remember whether I told you that or not. Now let's go to chapter 4, the chapter on ethics. Page 44 in chapter 4. There was a couple of people named Blanchard and Peel, Norman Vincent Peel and Blanchard, and they talked about, if you're looking at something and you're trying to determine whether it's ethical or not, there's 3 questions that you can ask yourself. Now, I think in the first time in test number 1, I had you look at the mirror test and those things, but I'm not interested in that for the final. Here's what I'm interested in for the final. Blanchard and Peel said there's 3 questions that you can ask yourself that will help you determine whether something is ethical or not. Here are those 3 questions which I'd like for you to know. Is it legal? Is it balanced? And how will it make me feel about myself? In the ethics chapter, page 44, I want you to know the 3 questions that you should ask yourself relating to whether something is ethical or not. Is it legal? Is it balanced? And how will it make me feel about myself? On page 77, this is in the decision-making chapter. He talks about decision-making, but I really don't want you to use what's on page 77 when it relates to decision-making. I want you to know the decision-making steps. That's these. So I want you to know the decision-making steps. You should have them in your prior notes. I may have sent them again to you in the study notes that I gave you for these last Unit 3 and Unit 4. I'm not sure. What I want you to know is the large print. The large print. The decision-making steps. Number 1, identify the problem or opportunity. Number 2, gather information. Number 3, develop alternatives. Number 4, evaluate the alternatives. Number 5, implement the chosen one, choose and implement. And number 6, follow up and check results. I want you to know the decision-making steps. Okay. Let's keep going. The chapter 7 is on performance appraisal. Performance appraisal. This is going to be the shortest thing. Chapter 7, we're about halfway through the review, aren't we? This will be the shortest thing that I want you to know. Chapter 7, page 89. He talks about the rationale for performance appraisals. He says the rationale or reason for performance appraisals is simple: to improve performance. So what I want you to know is, why does a supervisor evaluate employees? Why do we do appraisals? The number one reason that appraisal should be done is to improve the performance of the employee. I want you to know that, just that one sentence. So far, the book has not fallen apart. Chapter 8 on employee complaints. Chapter 8 on employee complaints. I want you to know on page 110 the 5-step procedure for handling employee complaints. Okay. Back in chapter 1, when I wanted you to know the different leadership styles, what I'd want you to do there is to list those 5 leadership styles for me and say a little something about each one. That's how I want you to answer that question. Now, in chapter 8, when we talk about employee complaints, all I want you to do is list the 5-step procedure. Listen, investigate, act, report, follow up. That's all you need to know. Those 5 steps. Not going to ask you to explain them. They're basically very self-explanatory. So I want you to know the 5-step procedure for handling employee complaints. Listen, investigate, act, report, and follow up. Okay. On page 141, this is our, as I mentioned to you, this was our sex and drugs chapter, and also a little bit about discipline. Okay, on page 141, they talk about the discipline process. Discipline requires a process. If you're going to do discipline correctly and effectively as a supervisor. Top of page 141, I want you to know the discipline process. Informal discussion counseling, verbal warning, written warning, suspension, dismissal. That's all. I'm not going to ask you to explain them. They're pretty self-explanatory. I just want you to know the 5 steps, I guess you can call it, in the discipline process. Informal discussion / counseling, verbal warning, written warning, suspension, and dismissal. Okay? That's it. Those are the things in chapters 1 through 12. I think all of them were no's, weren't they? Those are the things in chapters 1, 2 through 12 that I want you to know. Now 13, 14, and 15, as you've looked at those videos, you know what the no's and the be familiar with are. So this test number 4, the final, it'll cover chapters 13, 14, and 15, all the stuff we did when we went through that, plus what we've just reviewed in chapters 1 through 12. Now let me say this, and I think y'all know this already, but really finish strong. A couple of things. In our supervision class, you do have a research report to do. 3 pages, 3 sources. If you have any question about it, you can look at the contract document. It's also enclosed in Canvas. Pick any topic you want that has something to do with supervision. Anything that we've talked about, we don't even have to talk about it. It just has something to do with supervisors and supervision, whether it be something about communications or ethics or whatever you want it to be, that's fine. Find 3 different sources about what you want to write about. Read those 3 different sources and do me a 3-page research paper. Obviously I don't want you copying the research that they did. I want you to read the research and I want you to summarize and tell me what you think about it. 3 pages. Now, that's worth either 50 or, I think it's maybe worth 75 points in this class. It's worth a lot. So you want to do a good job with that. I mean, don't slack up. You've got a 100-point final and a 75-point, I'm almost sure, research paper. That's 175 points. That's almost a third of the grade is going to be coming in right here at the very last. So I want you to do a good job on that research paper. And I want you to focus on that final. I want you to do a good job on that final. Don't take anything for granted. Know that know stuff. Be familiar with that, be familiar with stuff. I mean, you know, we're in pretty crazy times right now. Something that I guess none of us have ever seen anything like it. And it's scary. It's just different. And you know, some of you may be under additional stress because of it. You may be under additional stress because of your job or lack of job. You may be under additional stress with family, folks not being able to work or go to school or whatever. And so you want something positive to happen. You want something positive to be happening during this time. So here's what I encourage you to do. Great job on the final. Great job on the research paper. Finish really strong in this class. So you can say, okay, one positive thing during a time that it was kind of tough. One positive thing was I made a good grade in Business 211, and I am one course closer to getting my associate higher education degree in business and technology. So that could be, this is one of those things that you can concentrate on that's a positive during all this time of uncertainty and everything. So I have looked forward to doing Business 211 with you, half by online and half face-to-face. Sure hope I have you in some other classes. It's always fun to get to know people and then have them in other classes as well. I think that completes the review for our Business 211. So it's about time to again to sign off. Stay safe. Be careful. And I'll have to do like Professor Pierce always says. I have to make some noise so he'll know that I am through with this section. And I'm through with this, you know, one more section that my executive producer, he's got to put into Canvas. So I have enjoyed it. Thank you very much. We are signing off the review. Good.